Good afternoon, or good morning, I should say, Joe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Simon. How are you?
Yeah, great, thanks. Sun
Good.
shining. I say London, but we're just outside. Sun shining here, which is a rarity. Um, yeah, spirits are fairly high. You know, we've had a busy week so far, so yeah, all good.
Good.
Thanks for asking. How about
Yeah.
yourself?
I think we flipped the weather because it's raining here in New Jersey. So,
Oh,
yeah,
I'd
thanks for
say
that.
I'd say boo-hoo, but you know, we normally get we get our fair share over here.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
okay, great. Well, Joe, look, thanks for joining today. Look, really excited about the episode ahead. The title that we've kind of chosen today is CRO's perspective on the importance of value and impact being measured in the sales process through to renewals and expansion.
Hmm.
A little bit of a tongue twister there. I hadn't
It
practiced
is.
that,
Yeah.
but look, I think hopefully that sets the scene in terms of the kind of the insight and the knowledge that you're going to share about basically shaping revenue. I think and really
Hmm.
driving bigger deals, more consistent deals, more predictable deals, and more scalable deals.
Absolutely.
Um, so look, I mean, for people that haven't tuned in before, my name's Simon Gregory. I'm a director of a recruitment company. I've spent 10 years working in the space, working with scale up and startup companies, mostly within the MarTech space. I'd say 95%. You know, we really focus on helping them build their go-to-market teams across EMEA and North America. And I'd sort of decided last summer, after nearly 10 years in the space, of meeting some like crazily clever and just smart people, I should really try and tap into that kind of network a bit more, yourself included, Joe, obviously.
Thank you.
Tap into that a bit more and to kind of allow people to kind of like understand a little bit about how these people tick, a little bit about their viewpoints on certain pillars of topics. So if you go onto YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, you'll see some like a bank of episodes that we're starting to build from go-to-market leadership profiles, revenue leaders like Joe, but also I've decided to diversify a little bit around that, like RevOps, sales enablement, even customer success and professional services and the role that plays. And then I've also gone kind of regionally into like building from 0 to 1 in DAC and a few kind of cool episodes around that. That obviously I think from the conversations I've had in the space over the last 10 years, some of that is very difficult to navigate and navigate well.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
for those that don't know Joe, you know, he's a multi CRO. You know, works in some awesome companies. I'll allow him to kind of give you the full rundown. But I had the pleasure of bumping into him when we were doing a little bit of work together at Swerve in the kind of customer and mobile engagement space. And it just really struck me when people met him, candidates wise, just the kind of the warm nature and just the knowledge and the kind of like empathy, I think, to like the European scene as well as the US. So that was, you know, that was really helpful to me as well because we onboarded some really good people.
We did.
But
We did.
we did. But I hope that you know, within these, what have we got? 40 minutes, 45 minutes. You know, there's going to obviously be some more depth into some of this topic. So,
Hmm.
I guess without further ado, I'll give you a tiny bit of an intro there, Joe, so forgive me.
Yeah.
But for the people that don't know you, would you mind just, you know, giving a little bit of a summary about your sort of career today and your professional journey?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. For first of all, thanks, Simon, for your help, number one, in building out our business at Swerve and Edited, but also for inviting me to join you today. So I
No
appreciate the
problem at all.
opportunity. Yeah. So look, I've been in the software space for 20 years. Started as a rep many years ago and had some great experiences through that process. I quickly moved from being a rep into sales leadership and have, over the last 15 plus years, held a number of different roles in sales leadership, from sales director running teams of 5 to 8 people to, you know, VPs of North America at companies like Sterling Commerce, where I ran a team of 125 people, into IBM, where again, scale is immense. And, you know, running an organization of that size, 130, 140 people, really gives you a different perspective versus the startup world that I had been accustomed to. And then over the last 5, 6 years, I transitioned back into CRO roles, global in nature, from, as you mentioned, Swerve and Edited and Yoda, where I ran a global team of, sales, growth marketing, and customer success organizations. So it's been a great journey and a lot of learnings through the years. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Okay, well, within your career, you mentioned there, has there been any kind of really influential figures or mentors that have played a kind of pivotal role in shaping your career? And if so, can you explain a little bit about that, and if there's any, guidance of why they were so impactful?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I think about that, I think back kind of my early days, which I think just as anyone growing up, you're influenced in the early days of your life. I think the early stages of my career, I was influenced quite a bit. I think there's probably two people that come to mind. One is Tom Aitchison. The other is Deb Surratt. Tom gave me my first promotion into sales leadership at a company called Web Methods long time ago. And Deb, I had the opportunity of really, as I moved into those larger scale leadership roles, Sterling, IBM, really had an opportunity to work alongside Deb and learn a lot from her. I think both of them, what I get from both of them is, number one, kind of authentic leadership. They were able to build really strong, connected culture throughout the sales organization, which I think really promoted the ability for the team to want to overperform for the leader, which I really try to take into how I approach it today. They were from the front leaders, so they weren't asking you to do anything that they weren't going to go do. They would go meet with customers, close deals. But the flip side of that is they really understood the importance of rigor of a process and how to run a tight organization, and the importance of predictability and repeatability, in a sales organization, in a revenue organization. So, those two really, I think, help form kind of how I approach things today.
Yeah, cool. I definitely recognise that name, Tom Atkinson, from
Yeah,
somewhere. Yeah, I
yeah.
think I bumped into him at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Yeah, okay, cool. And key milestones. I mean, if you are there any kind of, you know, lines in the sand across your career that you can look
Yeah.
back on and talk about?
Yeah, I think, I'm sure there's many people who will watch this who have had the experience of, going public, having that IPO exit. And I had that early on at Web Methods.
Cool.
So this was in the kind of heyday still of the internet boom right before the bubble burst. And so, I joined as like employee number 60.
Yeah.
A year later, we went public. We had probably 200 people. And just experiencing that ride and what it takes to rapidly scale an organization, perform at a high level, kind of keep things grounded as you're exploding in terms of growth, and just that ride was just really, I think, helped shape a lot, and something I would always remember. And then the next thing I was at a company called Comergent. We got acquired by Sterling. At Sterling, we got acquired by IBM. Going through those acquisitions, and at Sterling and IBM being on the side of acquiring companies, I think really helped understand the importance of how to manage transformation, because integrating those organizations, or being integrated in, was really important in terms of the integration piece, but then the importance of expertise. I think about it in terms of like challenger selling model, right? They talk about teaching, it talks about challenging the customers. And I think in order to do that, you need to bring a level of expertise and credibility. And so in both places, Sterling and IBM, we went through a transformation of the sales structure to go from a geo-based structure to a vertical team structure. And, the impact of that and the benefits of that were immense, but just the experience of doing that is important. And of course, at those big organizations, having rigor around process and data, and being able to manage the organization, the business through that lens, was really important. So.
No, that's really cool. I guess you mentioned there's some cool companies. Sterling Commerce, you said, edited IBM. All of those experiences must have been hugely diverse and different and fascinating in their own right.
Yeah.
What are some of the key learnings that you kind of took from those?
Yeah, I think the two that I would say, or maybe the three, is the importance around process and rigor around a process, because you do have much larger team size, right? And so in my specific example, I was running North America at Sterling. We had 125 salespeople in that organization. I'm just salespeople. In addition, we had sales engineering, partner people, et cetera. And at IBM, the last 3 years there, I ran the IBM Commerce business unit for North American retail. Again, about 130 people. And so when you're, I think, in that organization and you're managing the sales team to drive new logo revenue, but you're also managing 300, 400, 500 customers. And the blend of that, you definitely need consistent process to be able to manage the business and have visibility and granularity into, okay, how is this looking for a quarter, 2 quarters out, right? What's productivity across the board look like? So that was important. And then the other piece is, because both of those opportunities, we were selling a broad range of products, each rep. And so figuring out what's the best approach. Is it one rep that's owns an account that's representing all the products? Is it product specific people that are just merging in on different accounts? I think it highlighted for me the importance of, again, the importance of knowledge in the sales organization, and how improved knowledge just drives productivity. I have a theme that says, knowledge breeds confidence, confidence breeds passion, and passion sells. And so the importance, how that leads to me today is the importance of sales enablement, the importance of constant training, and knowledge building of the entire go-to-market team is really important. So that's what I kind of got out of those experiences, for sure.
Must be such a different experience being a leader of something of such scale compared to, and I'm not saying edited or Swerve by any means small, but the amount of moving parts within those larger organizations must be at times tricky to kind of, get your head around, I guess. Was that very steep learning curve when you came into those businesses, or?
I think that, it was a quick learning curve, but you certainly move, through a career, right? And I think when you compare, a Series A, B growth stage startup CRO job to one of those roles, I think in those larger scale organizations, obviously you're managing managers who are managing managers, right? And so you understand the importance of building a really strong management team and leaders, because what you value, I think, and quickly understand is, unlike running a direct team, it's not your words to those people. It's your words. It's the secret around the table exercise, right? It's your words to a group of people, to a group of people, to a group of people. And so I really built, I think, strong skill set in managing that. You also put a lot of value on communication to the entire team, and how frequent you do that, and making sure that there's clarity and alignment down through the organization, both around short-term goals, strategic direction, accountability, expectations. Like, I believe you can't reinforce that enough when you're scaling an organization. And even if I think about Edited as an example, where I had customer success, sales, right? Maybe it was 50, 60 people total. Even in that situation, I think just getting clarity down on a consistent basis, down across the entire organization of are our goals as an organization, short-term, long-term, what's our strategic vision? How does that translate to actions that you're taking today? And how we're holding people accountable and making sure that you can connect the dots across that, I think is really critical.
It's funny when speaking to people like yourself, that accountability stuff and getting everybody to lean into that sort of north star is a consistent thing. I think that's a great skill. It's almost like, obviously takes a long time to master, but you touched upon it there. Can you discuss your viewpoint on the alignment or the importance of alignment between sales, product, and marketing within any software company you've been involved with?
Yeah, it's critical. And I think you asked the question perfectly, because I think sometimes it's what's the line between sales and marketing? Because generally, I think the belief is that there's a little bit of, here's all your MQL, we're hitting our MQL target, you're not converting, right? That whole argument that sometimes pops up. But product marketing, which tends to sit inside product, I think being aligned across that is critical. I think the first thing I think about around alignment, the foundation for that is around the ideal customer profile. And, defining that, but defining it in probably painful levels of detail, right? I don't think you can go deep enough in terms of analysis of your customer base, the market, right? And defining, from who are we going to sell to, revenue size companies, what regions of the world, right? That's the high level, above the water part of the iceberg, right? I think you have to go deep in terms of defining that, in terms of who are the buyer personas, what's the team size, what's the employee size of the companies, right? I think the more granular you can get on that definition to ensure that everyone's aligned and that supports and aligns the strategic vision of the company, which sales, marketing, and product, amongst others at the executive team, need to be aligned around. I think that's critical, right? I think you then get into kind of the day-to-day running of the business. And I think there, certainly sales and marketing have to be really in lockstep around funnel economics and the entire funnel process. Down to, I've seen both in my experiences and others where, at a minimum on a weekly basis, there's a pipeline council meeting on a weekly basis, right? Where we're reviewing all of the key metrics of that pipeline at a management level team, from marketing, sales, finance, product, etc. Establishing a glossary, like what's each. This sounds simple, but often you get into this. Well, there's an MQL, an SAL, and an SQL, and it's like, well, what does that mean specifically, right? Does everyone agree on the terminology there? And then there's the accountability and the targets. Who owns what, right? Who gets integrated into that process when, right? Who picks it up, right? There's a whole, I think sales and marketing have to be really well aligned around those two things. I think pricing and packaging is really critical. And that's, I think, the triangle: sales, product, and marketing. And I think that lends itself to, the go-to-market motion on, okay, we have new customers we want to land, right? There's a landing product offering. There's an upsell product offering. There's a cross-sell product offering. And have we packaged and priced this configuration in a modular way right? That allows us to rapidly, with velocity, land new customers. And then is there a motion that's clearly defined, back to process, where I come in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months later, I'm going to upsell, right? I have a cross-sell opportunity, I have a renewal, et cetera. So I think looking at the entire life cycle of the customer journey from new logo in, onboarding out, making sure that the product is price configured and packaged up in a way that supports the long-term strategy of the company and is agreed upon across those three teams is important. And then I think there's associated with that is like segmentation. Are we selling to SMB, mid-market, and enterprise customers? What's the distribution? Do we have packaging and pricing right across there? How are we driving pipeline and messaging at those different segments? Because they are very different, right? SMB mid-market is a high velocity business that's run very differently, more on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis than, say, enterprise, right? Packaging, what's needed by an enterprise customer is probably different from what's needed from an SMB mid-market customer, depending where you draw the revenue lines. And so just agreement on that is important. And then it comes down to messaging, content, et cetera. And that's more sales marketing, right? What are the campaigns? What are we doing? What's the future look like? Are we having events? If we're having events, who's responsible for getting butts in the seats, right? How does that all work? I think it requires a really strong connection, I think, between let's say CRO, CMO in some cases. I've had certainly the opportunity to own marketing. It becomes a little easier. I have to look in the mirror and agree with myself, but it's still, there's still teams underneath there that have to get aligned. So you can't lose sight of the importance of the people in the trenches doing the work. Going back to my point around communication and making sure that it's not just CMO, CRO that are aligned, but down through the organizations, there's clarity and alignment on all of those things.
So there's actually, you're running through the almost like the workflow of the product, like there's a lot of future state hypothesizing, is there, within getting that and driving efficiency in that. Do you think that's something that you can jump into a role as a CRO and work with the team immediately to kind of plan, or do you need to have been in the business for a while to understand that stuff, do you think?
No, I think you can jump. I mean, I've had experiences, swerve edited, et cetera, where you kind of get inserted at some point in the life cycle. I've always found that it's that 30, 60 day initial period where I think it's critical to live the life of these different parts of the organization and really understand what do they do day to day, how do they function, looking at historical data, right, and just digging into the detail of the runnings of the teams. And I think from that, generally what I have found is it's easy to kind of look at that current state and say, we want to be here. What's the gap, right?
Yeah.
And then, there's the playbook that says, here's what's been used before. How do we adapt that playbook? I think a lot of times people will say, well, I have the playbook and I'm just going to apply the playbook. And I don't think you could do that. I think the playbook is a framework. It's good to start with that, but I think you have to apply it to the specific situation and be agile and adaptable to, fit it the right way to what the opportunity is.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is there a specific playbook? But in terms of the ICP, like let's just dig into that a little bit, because I feel like getting that ICP can be like, make or break to companies, and getting it as quickly as possible. Is there an actual playbook or a way that you are able to really drill down on the ICP personally, and if so, how have you done that successfully in the past?
I mean, I think there's tons of data around that certainly I have my methodology to do it. Others have their methodology. There's plenty of publicly available information on methodology to go through. So I don't think that's the hard part. I think it's more getting aligned on what do we want to achieve as a company, right? And then back into the ICP. So the example I would give is if I look back over the last 12 to 18 months, no secret, it's been tough for SaaS companies. And in some of the experiences that I've had, talking to other leaders, et cetera, one of the things that I have seen in an attempt for an organization to hit numbers, they tend to go from fishing in a pond to fishing in the ocean. Let's go out in the ocean. Let's go get more people. Let's try to get more opportunities, right? Let's build the pipeline. We need more pipeline, so let's go after more people. What that tends to actually produce are lower ASPs, lower win rates, lower conversion rates from each stage of the funnel through each stage, and ultimately higher churn rates. Because in your attempt to hit a top line revenue number, you're bringing in customers that are not right fits for the business, right? And I think as CRO, the beauty of the role is I have responsibility, and I am the last person accountable to ensure that I'm hitting top line numbers, I'm hitting the back end numbers, which is, retention, net retention, gross retention, right? All those things. And so one of the things that we did at Edited was to say, in a way, in an approach to improve our back end numbers, really, we went to the front end and said, one of the things that we see is the companies in doing the analysis that are churning are customers that are not good fits for what we are, right? So let's improve and let's define the ICP around companies that have been with us 5-6 years, who get tons of value out of it. And those are the ones we want to go after, right? Now, in being realistic, you're not going to get 100% of those. So, the target is, can I get 80% of my new logo wins being an ICP, which we were able to do. And consequently, the back end numbers improved, right? So I think it's really about getting detailed around what do we want to accomplish and how do we get, I think, focus improves results. So I believe the more narrow you can get within reason, the better results you'll get, especially now, given the current climate.
Yeah, totally understand. I think about it a little bit like recruitment. My old boss used to say, "Inch wide, mile deep," and what he meant by that was, be an absolute specialist within what your market, whether that be MarTech or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, you lose a lot of time, don't you? And I mean, there's loads of data around it, but the customers that churn cost SaaS businesses so much money, don't they? Really, it's damaging. Yeah.
There's a company that probably many of your clients are familiar with, which is Winning by Design.
Yeah.
And Jocko and the team, I think, have done a great job of truly creating a methodology that is perfect fit for SaaS businesses. And what I love about it, and what attracted me to it initially, was they put as much emphasis on that back end recurring revenue part of the business, which is where the money's made, right?
Yeah.
That's the power of SaaS, right? But putting the right and proper focus on that compared to the front end new logo win part of the business, which is still important. But I see a lot of organizations, I think, that focus on that new win piece. They don't focus as much on the back end, and that's where the power of SaaS is, right? Is getting that right. So, in my opinion,
no, totally. And from working within the kind of early stage startups, it's really where companies stutter. I think you see them, stuck at a million ARR or less. Okay, look, how does value? You talked a little bit about some different, but how does value play a role in the GTM process, in your opinion?
So, you would ask me about kind of influential moments in my career in the past. I mean, one of the things that was consistent from my time, whether it was Comergent, Sterling, IBM, was the integration of a value-centric sales methodology and approach, right? And that was always a common language, whether it was ROI, value, impact, et cetera. And I have carried that through, and I think it's critical in a number of ways. I mentioned winning by design. Winning by design does a great job as well as really focusing in on impact.
Yeah.
And they talk about the importance of defining and identifying desired impact that the customer needs to see and that we're going to deliver to them. And then past onboarding, and once you're getting into deployment, is revisiting that impact and making sure that you're actually delivering on that. And the importance of that in terms of expansion and renewal, right? So whether we call it value and actually measuring an ROI or just identifying impact, I think are both critical in the process, right? I think that it helps to address a couple of different things. It helps to address kind of, why now? It addresses, doing nothing. I think those are two things that are consistent in terms of delaying sales cycles or killing sales cycles. I think it helps to do that. I think it helps in a process, depending on how you go about defining that, it helps you to get broader and higher up in an organization, to get more access to stakeholders. We at Edited introduced a tool that we call a value realization plan. And that value realization plan, while it was introduced initially on the customer success side, pertaining specifically to renewals and upsell and expansion, we pulled it up front into the sales process as well. And it really helped to give us a consistent way from initial conversation of a new logo all the way through renewal of defining impact and value and being consistent in our communication with the customer around that. And that was really useful in achieving a couple of those things that I mentioned. Ultimately, I think it improves win rates. We saw that in my experience, again, both on renewals and new logo. So I think it's critical that a sales process has that integrated into it.
You mentioned this value realization plan to me before. Is that something that you saw in another business or learnt, or like where's that been originated from? And tell us a bit more about that. And what is it?
Yes, good question. Yeah. I would say version 1 of it, actually, we used a bit at Swerve, but we called it a pyramid. When we operationalized it at Edited, it really became more like a one-page table, right? And essentially what it did for us, and what it does for a sales process, is it helps to link strategic initiatives inside of a prospect to unique value or impact that your software is going to deliver, right? And in between that is a bit around the how that's going to work. Who within the customer organization is going to be users, who's going to get value, what are the initiatives that they have to support the strategic objectives where we can integrate ourselves into that, and then what are we going to do in that process, and what is the outcome and associated measurable value they're going to get from that process. And again, I think that one of the key aspects and messages that we try to drive to the sales organization in using the VRP was you can use it as a tool for a number of things. One of them is a qualifying tool. So when we first introduced it, we introduced it early in the process, in the sales process. And we use it as a way of testing, is the customer or the prospect do they really have a problem? Right? Are they willing to invest a couple hours with us to walk through in a collaborative way and fill in and have a discussion around this VRP? If they say we don't have time for that, then this isn't really a big problem, right?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
And then, you can strip some line, see if this is really, test this. Is this really something we want to go after or not? The other part of that is it helps to expand stakeholder community, which could help you to grow the size of your deal, to get more sponsorship in the organization, because you're having a collaborative conversation. And when you say, well, the merchandising team, the pricing team, the digital merchants all have a role to play in supporting the strategic objective and are engaged in initiatives that we can support, now all of a sudden my user base expanded, right?
Yeah.
So you have to look at it as not a checkbox, I did a VRP, but how do I use this as a tool to improve my position in the deal, right? And start to really mold this deal into a highly more winnable opportunity than what it is today. And then that VRP gets passed over to the account management CSM team. They take it, they refine it, and then they use it. 3 months into the QBR, here's what you said you wanted to do and achieve. Here's the things we achieved. So we've had impact, right? Now it's like, okay, how do we expand that? How do we start to reinforce that? So come renewal, no one's asking, well, why are we using this, right? You have a roadmap of here's why you're using it, and we actually deliver value to the organization. So I just think it's a great standard way that you can incorporate into the process. It's a common way to talk value and impact through the whole customer lifecycle. And what was interesting was one of our customers was Nike. And I remember being in a QBR with them, and I asked them, what do you think about this? Like, is this helpful? And their answer was, we love it. We actually anonymized it and gave it to like 3 of our other vendors and asked them to start to use it. So like I would tell salespeople, like, customers want this. Like, this is a beneficial tool for them to use as much as us, right? They're going to be asked, why are we buying this? And they can say, here's why, right?
Yeah.
So I found it to be really productive.
That's really cool. I love the acronyms. I love when you dig into this kind of stuff with people like yourself, Joe. You get all these like weird and wonderful acronyms.
We make them up.
The VRP. The VRP. I love it. But as you say, I mean, especially when you're taking on maybe startup, when you're looking to, bring on board and sign a startup into a stack, you want to obviously have something that, you're not your neck's on the line somewhat, especially if you're like an early adopter on this stuff, but to have that kind of framework that is black and white, they're able to defend somewhat. From both sides, I think is, that's really, really cool. Okay, so let's flip it on to sort of like sales process. You talked a little bit about, some of the value selling stuff, but how do you personally try and create sort of truly world-class sales process, and why is that important in your organizations?
Yeah. So I come back to the important part of it and why it's required. If I go into an organization, I always say, like, while I am more than happy to don a cape at the end of a quarter and go out and close a deal so we make the number for the quarter, I often say that if I have to do that consistently, we're not successful, right? Even though we're making a number, because success to me, from a go-to-market perspective, from a CRO perspective, is getting to repeatability and predictability throughout the entire go-to-market engine, right? I want to be able to predict pipeline. I need to be able to predict, through the funnel. I need to be able to predict sales forecasts. I need to be able to predict, retention, renewal, churn, et cetera, upsells. I need to be able to lay that out and forecast that accurately, a quarter out, 2 quarters out. And so sales process and being, I think, disciplined around it is the science part of, sales art science, right? It's a little bit of the science part of it. I'm running an experiment.
Mm.
We're selling to these people in this way, and I believe that this will produce these results. If everyone is out doing their own thing, I have no proof that what's working, what's not. Everyone's on the same page. I'm able to really identify signals that I'm listening for. This works, this doesn't. We're losing all of our deals in stage 4 versus you prefer to lose them if I'm going to lose them in stage 1 or 2. Why is that? Let's go back to the sales process. Let's look at gone calls. Let's figure this out. It just gives you a common foundation to measure all that. Ultimately, though, the outcome we want is predictability, repeatability, in the go-to-market motion, right? And again, that process has to cut. That's what I love about winning by design. It has to cut through new logo all the way out to the back end of renewal and upsell as well, right? You need to be clear on that, especially in today's climate with some of the, I would say, constraints around capital. I think a lot of SaaS organizations are being, really forced into more than 12 months ago, forced into getting to profitability, getting to being cash flow positive, right? Improving free cash flow because they're not getting more money.
Yeah.
And so the repeatability of that, the predictability and the forecasting of it from a financial perspective is critical. So I think those are things that just really help. I think from a sales process perspective, I think, again, more detailed I think you can be, the better. I think it has to be buyer-centric. I think a lot of sales process that I've seen, from stage to stage is like the sales team, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, we could do stuff all day long. What I'm more interested in is what is the buyer, what is the customer doing, right? They need to do this. Maybe to move from stage 2 to 3, we need to have an exec alignment call, right, with the sponsor. And if we can't get that, then maybe it doesn't move, right? Maybe it's not where we think it is. Or I always like looking at these things as tests, right? Let's test this. Can we get a call? If we can't, doesn't mean we stop the deal, but it's a red flag, right? And so I think buyer-centric sales processes are critical. I think you have to be specific on, which part of the go-to-market team is engaged at which stage, who's doing what to who, I think is all critical. And then what I've really found helpful is as you lay out this process, right, at the foundation is, okay, to be successful at managing a deal through stage 1, here's the skills that a rep needs. So how do we build a sales enablement plan off of that, right? So in stage 1, I need proof points. I need customer stories. I need white papers. So there's a bit of a marketing plan there. So do I have all these assets? And then a rep needs to be able to do discovery. Do they understand enough about the product, the industry, the market to really conduct discovery, right? Is there a sales enablement opportunity to support that? So I think you can really build a lot of the go-to-market operation off of that sales process.
Mm-hmm. Similar but slightly different question. But what are the steps that you take to create a culture of sales excellence? Okay, I think, like a sort of attracting really great people and obviously driving that very high caliber sales excellence.
Yeah. I think that there's a few items. I mean, you guys can help with one of those, which is hiring the right team, right?
Yep.
I think you have to get the right people. I think you have to be, clear on what the right person is. I mean, I think a lot of people have kind of check boxes that they want to go through. I come back to a few things, right? Authenticity, I think, is critical in a leader. I think being authentic, being clear, being vulnerable, I think are all things that help build loyalty, that help build a desire to perform, right, and hit numbers, right, as a team.
Mm-hmm.
which is the other part. I think, in my experience, is one of the things that I've done that has shown and proved to be beneficial is approaching go-to-market as a team, right? So it's not sales and BDRs and customer success and growth market. We're one team, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we hit the pipeline targets this month or quarter, it's the team did it, right? Everyone is accountable. If we hit the number, it's the team that did it, right? Understanding that there's, kind of integration of everybody's, and they're held accountable to one another,
Yeah.
I think is critical, right? Having a connection across the individual components of the team and having those people want to do it, not necessarily for me, but for each other, I think really starts to breed a lot of both loyalty and a desire to perform high. And then I think it comes down to, targets, being clear on those, and then holding people accountable at an individual level. So there's one aspect, as I'm saying, around the team size, but at the end of the day, you do have to hold each person accountable because you need everyone, especially on those growth stage companies. You need everyone producing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the other piece of it.
Yeah. Joe, you said a little bit about, I don't know if you've seen my questions, but you said a little bit about the death of the SDR and, obviously AI and, automation, causing them some headache, maybe around, in the space. I think Mark Castello, I think his name is, from Outreach, put a few things out about that. What is your viewpoint on that? Do you think that SDRs as we know it today are actually in danger of being wiped out, or do you think there's still a very valid place for them within enterprise sales?
No, I think there's a valuable spot for that role in enterprise sales. I certainly think the role may change, right? Yeah. I think one of the things that's driving a lot of that opinion is over the last, since the pandemic, the primary motion from BDRs has been email, right? And so I feel that what people are suggesting is I don't need a person to create an email sequence to then send out, which is true. Like I think AI will, the outreaches of the world, et cetera, will incorporate AI where it becomes more of an assistant to the role. My view is there's a couple ways of approaching, I think, the XDR umbrella, right? Number one, there's always been a dialogue around, well, do BDRs belong in marketing or they belong in sales? And I've had both, right? And what I realized and what we've tried successfully is I think you can divide things up and say there's a concept of an LDR, which is a lead development rep, and that person should probably sit with marketing. And as marketing runs digital campaigns, that person is helping to move things through the funnel, right? And that can mean a couple of different actions. It could mean an email sequence. It could be an invite to a webinar. It could be sending out a white paper and following up, right? A number of things to move that person through top of funnel, mid-stage funnel, and onto a sales cycle probably, hopefully. Then I think in the enterprise space, there's a sales development rep that's teamed with a sales executive who are together working on more outbound motion, right? Potentially in conjunction with marketing's efforts, ABM and those types of actions to take down, key target accounts, right? Mm-hmm. Penetrate, get in, start building pipeline and sales opportunities in that stage. So I think if you break those roles up into their proper functions and get them focused on an action, it's higher productivity. And I think you'll eliminate the actions that AI can replicate. The other piece of that BDR, SDR, LDR role that I think companies underestimate is the value of career path, both for the individual employee as well as the company, right? So at Yoda, we probably had 4 or 5 people that moved from BDR role,
Yeah.
first job, BDR role, do well, year later move into an SMB sales rep role, right? 6 months later move into a mid-market sales rep role, right? A year later move into an enterprise sales rep role. There's a career path. Now, some BDRs want to stay in that role, and that's great. That's an opportunity as well. But for those that want this to be the entry point in their career path for a sales executive role, an enterprise sales role, it's great. It works. It helps the company a bit. So I think we underestimate the value of that, in an organization. So.
Mm. Yeah, I didn't actually think about it from that perspective, but also, breeds that loyalty aspect. Time in the business obviously allows them to be masters of the product. And probably shouldn't say this, but obviously bringing people constantly from an external perspective has a cost attached to it.
Well, but
So,
I think that and I was going to mention it doesn't preclude the need,
yeah,
right, that you serve, which is, what, since I think our work together was primarily in Europe, I need somebody to go to cover France,
yeah,
right? Like, to sell into that country and own that country. That person's not
yeah,
going to through the BDR channel, right? I'm going to come to you, and
yeah,
you're going to go find me the perfect person in France to take that role. So I think that there's opportunity for both, right?
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes it's, well, I want to expand the commercial business, the SMB mid-market business. Am I going to go out and hire somebody to do that? That's probably not going to be right. I can bring somebody who knows our space, knows our product, knows our people, and
yeah,
drop them in that. It's less risky, right? So.
yeah. Yeah, totally. It's actually really interesting. I hadn't even thought about it like that. It's a
Yeah.
great point. In terms of like when you're hiring for your teams, let's maybe think about this from a mid to senior perspective, not
Mm-hmm.
junior staff, but are there any sort of specific personality traits that you're looking for people to come into your culture?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely. I think one of the things is intellectually curious, right? People who, it goes back to the sales process piece. Again, I think if you look at LinkedIn, there's differing opinions of what's the most important part of the sales process, right? But discovery, I find, is generally the area that requires enablement the most. Is an area that reps, strong or not, tend to skip over, right? And that's probably the most important part of the sales process, in my opinion. So I think intellectually curious, asking questions, right? Always digging for detail, I think is important. I am a big fan of challenger sales model, right? It's not like I don't build a sales process based on challenger at the level of detail for that, but I think that there's aspects and characteristics, not being afraid of having a little contention, a little friction in the sales cycle. Being confident enough to challenge a customer, to express your opinion, to help change their thought process. I look for those things as kind of foundational items, in a rep. The final piece, and this goes back to my days Sterling and IBM, where I talked about expertise. If I'm selling if e-commerce into retail, I'm looking for expertise in one or another area. They
Yeah,
either have to know retail really well and be experts at that, or they need to have sold e-com for a while, right? So there has to be a level of expertise somewhere in the market that you're in, whether it's the market itself or our space. As an example of edited, we found that some of the best reps there were people that were like, we hired a couple of people that were chief merchandising officers
all right.
for a retailer. They never sold software in their life, right? But you bring them in, you have a sales process. So you say, here's how you do it. You have an enablement program built off that so you can enable them and get them up to speed. But the level of credibility they have is unparalleled, and that helps sell, right? So
yeah, and I think they really, really, really understand the metrics that matter, don't they?
100%. Oh, yes,
Yeah, so they can
exactly.
talk, they can really connect on a completely different level than
That's
a
right.
rep can.
That's
No,
right.
that's cool. I've seen
And
that work.
it gives you guys a lot more opportunity to go find talent.
Yeah, it does. It does. It does. I've seen that. I've seen that in the software space, actually, in the MarTech space with like CRM, CRM
Mm-hmm.
companies,
Yeah.
people coming, going client side and then coming across. But yeah, it's an interesting angle. You mentioned there that, and again, look, no surprise, 2023, pretty challenging, right? 2024 seems to be a little bit better, but still seems a little bit rocky.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
VC funding, private equity funding, early stage scale ups, which is where I focus, and you've spent the last 5 or 6 years in. What's your outlook for 2024 and 25, if you may?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's going to slowly improve, through this year.
Good.
Yeah. Well, good and bad. I would prefer it to aggressively
Yeah.
improve.
Yeah.
But I think that's a 2025 thing. I think, there's a lot of macro issues going on, right? Wars around the world,
Yeah.
inflation still a challenge, an election here in the US. I think an election probably in UK, right? I think all of those things are kind of keeping a lid on really expanding rapidly. But I feel that I'm very optimistic that there's pent up demand, right?
Mm.
And I think there's pent up demand from the buying community, who has been holding back on technology and initiatives and so forth. I think there's pent up demand in SaaS firms requiring capital. And we
Yeah.
know that the venture and private equity space has continued to raise funds, but not deploy funds.
Yeah.
So there's money there, there's capital there. And so I think when it does pop, it's going to be pretty aggressive, probably through 25 and 26.
It's really good to hear.
Yeah,
It's exactly what I needed at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. So thank
exactly.
you for
Perfect.
that. I can go to bed a happy man now. No.
Nice.
But seriously, I know it's not all roses, but it is good to hear, from somebody that's obviously well connected in the space.
Yeah.
Final question from me, because I know we're just running over time here, but I always like to give guests an opportunity. If you were to speak to a first line or second line leader that's moving into the job for the first time, is there any guidance that you would kind of give them on that journey?
Yeah. I mean, I would say pay attention to details, manage a team mostly on an individual basis. So look at each person individually, because for that manager to be successful, they need everyone on the team being productive, right? I think the concept of like hire fast, fire faster kind of concept, but I think urgency and decisiveness in that role in terms of your team and assessing the team, I think is important. And then lead from the front, right? Communicate clearly, lead from the front, put yourself in their shoes, be authentic and transparent with them. I think is what will drive loyalty and a desire for them to perform at a high level for you.
Yeah, great. Okay, that brings us to the end of the questions. A little bit of fun just to finish off,
Yes,
like always, Joe. Yeah, so I don't want any delaying. All right, it's got to be
I
kind
can't
of the
think.
first. It's got to be the first kind of answer that comes to your head.
Yeah.
But here we go. So Favorite piece of tech or app you are using now?
Clary.
Brilliant. iOS or Android?
iOS.
Night at the disco or night at the restaurant?
Restaurant.
Favorite food?
Steak.
Favorite movie?
Wall Street.
Okay, cool. If you were to describe yourself in 2 words, what would it be and why?
Authentic. Trustworthy.
Okay, cool. Favorite place that you visited on holiday or just generally visited in your life?
Italy.
Whereabouts?
Tuscany. I
Lovely.
had an opportunity to stay for 10 days in a villa in Umbria, which was
Wow.
fantastic. So, but anywhere
Wow.
in Italy, I'll go and stay.
Okay, fine. If you have one, what is your guilty pleasure?
Probably wine.
Yeah, fine. I was going to say you've been to Italy. It's got to be wine. It's got
Exactly.
to be wine or some sort of pizza
Italian
or
food.
pasta.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was going to
yeah.
say. Okay, that's fantastic. Hey, Joe, thanks very much for being such a good sport at the end there. And obviously the discussion there I thought was brilliant. Really, it really shone out, like the way that you've managed the kind of the life cycle of the companies that you've been involved with and the kind of culture that you bring. So I'm really hoping that's going to be valuable to our sort of joint listeners.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed it. If there's anybody that listening to this that wants to reach out and get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Probably just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, connect with you. You're pretty visible. Yeah.
Yep.
So Joe Aliardi. Yeah. You'll see there. But yeah, look, thanks for joining us for just over the hour today. I know
My
it's
pleasure, Simon.
coming up to. Is it coming up to lunch now?
It is.
Over where you are.
Is. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
But
Well, thanks again.
enjoyed the opportunity, Simon. Thank you, and great chatting with you.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thanks, Joe.
Yep. All right.